without crossing out checker flag. That's a fine. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 42 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and a lineup of special guests all throughout the year. This week, Steve, excited for this, we break down the number 12 team's run in the NASCAR Cup Series championship race at Phoenix Raceway, and it's the first time we get to break down a championship race that Ryan Blaney was eligible for, raced in, competed in, battled in, and went out and won.
Blaney looking for a championship. Chastain down the backstretch for the final time. Blaney is going to run in his tire tracks. You know, winning is in his family's DNA, and Ryan has just crested the mountain of all wins. Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion.
How about that, Steve? How about that?
What else do we got to talk about? That's about it right there, huh?
I can't believe it.
It was what a year. What an afternoon. The afternoon was like a microcosm of the season, right? The ups and the downs and ins and the outs, and you can feel the emotion go up, and you can feel like the air coming out of a balloon again. And then all of a sudden by the end, everybody's hard work and determination and everything they could do, and the focus, it just all came together and at the right time.
It's a great way to describe it. I think going into it, we would have loved it if they just ran into Phoenix, sat on the pole, led the most laps, ran away with that thing, won the race, all that stuff. But I mentioned in our Discord chat that was extremely lively the last few races, and especially this race, that nothing that Ryan Blaney does, and I don't want to say it in a negative way, is easy. There's always some sort of drama behind it. There's always grit. There's always, like you said, determination, overcoming obstacles. And I think that's perfect for, the family that he comes from, the area that, he was born into. It's nothing comes easy, and it almost makes it feel better.
Degree of difficulty, and we're at a stage now in the NASCAR series where it is so hard. How many times do you actually watch a race where anybody just checks out like that anymore? Nobody does. Everybody seems to come back to the pack. The aero package and the things that happen with that, and the way that everybody races each other, and they really are pretty equal. And to be that little step above, or that little bit faster, that little bit better control of the car, on the edge, when it's on the edge like that, we know what kind of car control he has. It all just came together in the last couple of weeks like it needed to. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful way to end. Like I said last week, he only had to beat 3 guys, just 3. We weren't worried about everybody else. And so that statistic about the first time in the championship 4 era where somebody else won the race, we're totally fine with that. And I'm sure Ryan's totally fine with that, because all he did was beat the 3 guys he needed to beat. And there was great drama racing for that too, the whole thing coming down to that restart with 30 something left, and having to get to the 2 guys in front of him and get past them. It was a awesome job of racing. It showed off all his skill set, and it was a great way to go.
Now, something sounded really familiar that you just mentioned, and that was the fact that a really smart analyst out there at least a week ago predicted that Ryan Blaney would be the first driver in the Championship 4 era to win the championship without winning the race. And I just got to give a big pat on the back to that guy, because super smart fan and analyst and podcast co-host, I think, right?
Don't hurt yourself trying to do that either.
I did, and it came true. I think
Came
we
true.
discussed last week, though, that we maybe hoped it was going to be Harvick that would be the
Yeah,
one that won,
that was,
and it turned out a little bit different, but it did happen. It did happen.
mhm. Yeah, you said I said Harvick right away. I think you brought up Denny Hamlin being a guy, and Denny with the 2-tire strategy at one point kind of shows up near the front for a little while. We really didn't see Chastain being that guy, but he did all the things he needed to do to stay where he was, where he was going to be. So, kudos to him for what he did. But just like we brought this up before the podcast, just like when Dave won would be the nationwide race that he won back in the day. That night, Dave won the nationwide race. It was great drama. Kyle Petty was on the call. But when the race was over, they did a real brief interview with Dave and with Trent Owens, his crew chief, and then boom, they went right to Kevin Harvick because Kevin Harvick won the Nationwide Series championship that night. He clinched it with whatever finish he had in the race. I don't even think he finished in the top 5 or 10, but he clinched it. And, same thing yesterday. God bless you for winning the race, but I hate to say it, no one cares because you won a race that really had nothing to do with the championship. And the championship was won yesterday at the highest level, and not just the nationwide or anything, the highest level we have. So, congratulations on your trophy for, I'm glad you got to smash a watermelon or whatever, but the real trophy was on the backstretch last night after the race, and there was only one guy taking pictures with it.
Now, one other prediction came true from this podcast, and that was one of yours, Steve, where basically since the beginning of the year, maybe even the first episode of season 3 of the Team Blaney podcast, you'd been preaching the fact that all Ryan Blaney needed to do was peak at the right moment. And you said this 12 team is capable at some point in the year and just going off on a run and winning multiple races and potentially making a deep playoff run. So you did say that. I could go back and get the receipts. You definitely said that. You said that at the beginning of the year. You said that when they won the Coke 600. You said that when they struggled over that summer stretch, that all they have to do is peak at the right time and they could go out there and win the championship. Everybody throughout this playoffs, as Ryan advanced, they said you do not want to see that 12 team get to the championship 4 in Phoenix because of what they did in the season finale last year, because of what they did in the spring race when he finished second to William Byron, because of what they did in the last 2 races there where he finished 4th and 4th. So 4th, second once again. Nobody wanted that 12 car in the championship 4, and they got there and they made them pay for it.
Yeah, the peaking at the right time thing is a blueprint that Penske showed last year. And Joey Logano, he wins, what was it? He won Vegas in the round of 8, and then he went on to win the championship. Well, same thing for Ryan. Ryan won Talladega to make sure he got into the round of 8, and then he was going to point his way in Martinsville, but then what the heck? Let's just go out and win Martinsville too while we're at it to make sure you're in the round of 4. And once you've got that kind of momentum and you've got that kind of confidence in yourself, and the team's got that kind of confidence in themselves, Jonathan Hassler called really one of the most marvelous races as far as adjustments go. And that car at the end of the race did everything Ryan needed it to do to get past 2 guys at that point because we lost the 20 early on. And that's all she wrote.
Ryan kind of actually acknowledges this in some of his post-race comments, and we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show pretty extensively. I've pulled all the audio I can just so we can have some fun here and listen to everybody's reactions to this championship victory. But he said, in practice, he didn't think the car was necessarily that good, but then you look at the speed chart and it's like, oh, it's pretty good. He mentions that all throughout practice and then in qualifying, no rear grip. I have 0 rear grip. And looks at the speed charts and, you qualified 15th. It wasn't that great. But get into the race, all race long. I think even until the last run, no rear grip. The thing, though, and he mentioned it too, is realizing afterward that was the exact same complaint every single car in the field, all 4 and then 3 championship eligible drivers complained about the same exact thing. So it's like he thought he had this terrible car that was running the fastest laps on the track most of the race, was one of the few cars that could catch people and pass people all race long in the positions that they had because of pit strategy or one slow pit stop out of the entire day, was able to make up track position even if they lost it a little bit. So it was just a little bit funny to me, and I'm saying that to myself too. I'm like, he doesn't even realize how fast his car is, and that everybody else is fighting the same condition. But you're right, Jonathan kind of chased it all throughout the race and ended up with the perfect setup right at the end.
Yeah, the was it Racing Analytics Twitter put out the post where he posts like the last 50 laps with their median speed. Ryan was the fastest one of the bunch. It looked like, where they put him on the track, he puts him on the track there, and he's got the 5 car like half a turn away, so, a couple second win, pretty easily there. So yeah, if they ran in clean air, with nobody in the way, that's what it would have done. But, yeah, it was just, you don't want to say dominating performance because, there was so much up and down in the race itself. But in the end, when it really counted, Ryan showed off how talented a driver he is by making the passes he made, and then keeping them guys. Actually, he started to gap them as the end of the race happened, and it was a beautiful thing to watch at the end.
I definitely want to focus on the positive in this episode because there's just so much to celebrate, so many people to celebrate and thank for all of their hard work and dedication. But I just want to have one real quick discussion on something that circulates pretty much almost every single year with this championship format. And this is the fact that you're going to see people on social media or maybe some drivers or former drivers and analysts kind of talking about the way we crown champions and what does it really mean anymore in this era where it comes down to one race and 4 drivers. Admittedly, I'm a stats guy, and it really bugged me that Ryan fell below his career, best totals when it came to top 5s, top 10s. He was up a little bit in laps led. Actually, no. Yeah. So even laps led was down a little bit this year as well. So it's like across the board statistically wasn't necessarily Ryan's best season, but those 3 wins in the championship have to overshadow that. And does it bother you that they kind of had a okay season until it got to the second half of the year and then they go on this run and win the championship? It does not bother me. Those people don't bother me. In my opinion, we're going to talk about this. You'll see those comments for the next couple weeks, probably up until the ceremony. And then when they roll into Daytona, he's going to have that fresh new fire suit with the championship patch on it now. And he's going to get the respect of the garage. And nobody's even going to think about the number of top 5s he had this year, which was 8. The number of top 10s he had this year was 18. Those 3 wins. And yeah, they fall, except for the win count, they fall just short of his career best totals, but he's got that big trophy that's going to go somewhere on a mantle in his house that's going to tell a different story.
I'm going to, mention my wife, Kate, here because she brought this up last night. It's something she used on Twitter. It shut a couple people up, but this is the format they've now been given. Okay. And it's not a stick and ball sport type of thing, but it is in a way, the way it's culminating with one last race. And she brought up I think it was the 2011 New York Giants. Okay. The 2011 New York Giants finished the regular season at 9-7, made the playoffs, won their way to the Super Bowl. So they got hot, right? They got hot at the right time. They had to play an extra game or 2 because they didn't win the division, I don't believe. And then they won the Super Bowl. They beat a 13-3 New England Patriot team that was just steamrolling everybody all season long. So getting hot at the right time, getting yourself to the right situation, getting to the championship, and then making it happen. And it's the same thing we've seen. And this is the way the playoffs are built right now. So everybody can talk about, well, this guy was so great all year long. Well, that's great. But truthfully, the pressure was on in those last 4 races, right? The last, maybe even going into that, like the Talladega win. Okay. So they win Talladega to make sure they're in those last 4 races, the last 3 races with a chance for the final race. The pressure was on everybody at that point. Right. And what did the 12 team do? Where were their finishes at Homestead or Vegas Homestead and then Martinsville, running in the top 5? Not even qualifying well, right? They didn't qualify well in a lot of those races, but by the end of the first stage, they're up in the top 4 or 5, right? And then moving their way up and then leading the laps and then all of a sudden winning that final race and then getting themselves to the situation and performing in that situation. Whereas, the 20 car blew up, it literally blew up. A rotor blew up on the 20 car, is that the driver? Probably not. Is there something mechanical there they might have tried to do? Maybe, but it was all about the pressure. Everybody had to perform under the pressure. And I said it like, I always say it about putting the pressure on everybody else, right? Be the guy out front and make everybody chase you, and down the stretch, that's really what the 12 team did. They got themselves out front and made everybody else make the mistakes.
Now, does my prediction that came true bother you at all? That he is the first one to not win the race and just celebrate the race win and the championship win altogether? Is that going to bug you at all, or is it the same thing? We roll the Daytona 500 next year and we're good to go.
Can I ask you a question? Who's the 2023 NASCAR champion?
That is young Ryan Blaney.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we got that part right. 2023 NASCAR champion Ryan Blaney, correct? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they passed inspection and they did not get disqualified.
Excellent. Good to know. Good to know that we stayed up till 11 o'clock at night for that. So no, I don't fatter. I said it last week. I said you have to beat 3 guys, and I told people, I don't care if you finish 20th and they finish 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. I don't care. If you beat those 3 guys, you're champ. And that's all that matters. I hate to say it, you can have all the watermelon you want.
Now, I feel like this might be a long episode just in general, just because I do want to get to all those sound bites that we're going to have later on. I could keep talking to you about this race for hours, but I do think we need to do our traditional race recap because I know that's what the diehard fans are looking for. And we need to talk about that qualifying session that concerned me a little bit if it wasn't for what happened at Martinsville and knowing that this 12 car was capable of driving up through the field.
Yeah, this practice, we're going to try and blow through this kind of quick because truthfully, a lot of it is really worried about where the other 3 cars were during the race too. But championship practice here, they got like a 50-minute practice where everybody was out there at the same time, and they had a game plan of going out and doing a couple different runs. Within the first couple laps, third lap he ran, he was up to P1 for a little bit there. Then the 8 car kind of took over. But 8 laps in, he was P3 and less than a tenth back of the leader. They did 20 laps to start with. Early on, the 10-lap average was second best behind the 20, which, once again, the 20 is what, we're looking at the other 3 guys. What do they do? They did 20 laps. They did a hot pit entry. But he was one of the faster ones on the board there. He's P3 with a single lap. The 20 was P4. 24 was P7. The 5 was P8. And the 2 and the 22 were actually out there focusing on qualifying runs. So this was something that, what were his teammates doing? What were they trying to help with? 17 minutes in, they went back on track there, and they were top in 20 lap average, which tells you right off that the overall speed was pretty good there. They had to add a couple minutes to the practice because the 16 spun out. With 15 minutes to go, they head back out for one more bunch of laps here. They were literally racing with the 24 on track. I saw 7 minutes to go, and they were holding them off. They were doing a good job, actually. The 5 slapped the wall a little bit. Jonathan says, go ahead and run as many as we can and then do a hot pin entry. Brian says something about no security whatsoever. And I believe this is when Ryan scraped the wall.
Yeah, I was just about to point that out.
Yep.
And they didn't fix it. They didn't fix it for the race. They left that little ding in the fender
scratchy there. Yeah. So with 3 minutes to go, he does bring it in here. They ran 63 laps overall. The 20 did like a mock qualifying run. Now, here's the part that kind of irritates me, that you're down the championship 4 and you're going to do this Group A and Group B thing now for qualifying, which splits up the championship 4, 2 of them in this group, 2 of them in that group. Ryan, I believe it was Group B. So in Group A, the 4, the 24, 23, the 5, and the 43 were the fastest. In Group B, the 1, the 11, the 17, the 45, and the 19 were the fastest. Ryan was P8 in his group. And he says right there, he's in no rear grip. And the 20 was P7 in the group. So that group overall was not good. Like I said, I don't know if going out second group made a difference. Track got hotter or slicker or got cooler. Well, I'm not sure which, but
yeah, especially for a team that had sat on the pole in 3 or 4 of the playoff races, something crazy like that. Though honestly, I kind of wanted him to sit on the pole because they had not won from the pole at all. They've kind of had struggled a little bit.
And it's something about where set up for the race versus set up for qualifying. And they do make some adjustments, or don't make some adjustments, but not totally all adjustments. So there were a couple of things there too that may have been set up a certain way for a certain thing. I guess there was it may be in one of your sound clips coming up in a little bit, but where Roger asked him about qualifying afterward, and Ryan looked a little down, and then Ryan said something about, well, I started P14 and going into the last stage at Martinsville. And Roger said something about, well, that's all I needed to hear. He knew he was ready. So we're going to get to race day here with the 20. The 20 was going to start P14, and the Ryan was going to start 15th here. And, so
24 on the pole.
On the pole, yeah, I'm sorry. And the 5
was
P4.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to flip the page. Stages of 60, 185, 312 here. Fuel situation about 92 to 100 laps. Pit stall 38. Open in front, 3 behind. This was the kind of cool thing. Even though they qualified where they did, the championship 4 guys were given preference in the order they did qualify. So sure, he was the 4th best, but he got of the championship 4, but he got to pick 4th overall. So you got
the 24 cars in that number 1 pit stall, which at Phoenix is a big deal, especially going all the way back to 2021 when Larson won his championship, because they got out first, and even Byron, almost every pit sequence here gains on everybody too. So it did mean a lot to sit on the pole and get that stall, but obviously that we know that didn't matter too much. Didn't win him the championship though.
No. Yeah. How about that? The kind of interesting here, something little side note I found out. So the 5 and the 20 both pick pit stalls where they have an open out. Okay. But behind the 5 is the 22, and behind the 20 was the 21. Now, pitting behind a guy, unless you come in before he does, you're really not going to affect him much, because he's still going to, if he pulls in before but if you get to a situation in the race where you're running a spot or 2 ahead of that guy, and he's got to come in and around you, and you go a little deep in your box, and he has to angle in differently, it could affect him a little bit. But like I said, those
wingmen getting into position.
They could have been in position, but neither of them really ran up there with those guys at all to actually cause that. So Roger gets on the radio and says, let's go here. And Ryan says, let's go win a championship. And once they get to the start here, that sorts out to P16 early on. The mayhem that happens on these restarts is awesome to watch. At lap 7, he's behind the 99 here. Lap 8 passes the 99. And the 8 does a twofer. Get to 14th and says he needs more rear grip. Lap 14, he's behind the 20. So he got up to him. And then Ryan says 2 numbers of grip. He wants kind of a swing here. But lap 30, he passes. The 41 gets to 13th. And then he's working on the higher line on both ends here. So during the race, I watch in-car camera, and he definitely did a lot of different things to see if he could run high and run low and what kind of lap times they were getting out of it. And it's amazing, actually, because the early part of the race, that's what they're doing. But later in the race, he pretty much can do anything. Lap Lap 36, we passed in the 54 to get to 12th. We're chasing the 45 now. Lap 42 passes the 45 to 11th. Now running behind the 11th. Lap 52 passes the 11th, gets to 10th. And at lap 55, I noticed on lap times that Ryan's faster than the other three guys. So once he catches up to them, lap 60 here, the 24 does win the stage. The 5 finished 5th. The 20 finishes 9th, and Ryan finishes 10th. And talks about no rear grip. Similar problem at both ends. Jonathan's talking about tightening up at least one number change. He doesn't want to go too far because he's, they want to build, if they're going to build anything, build, loose, not tight.
Slow and methodical march forward there. I mean, it wasn't like as fast as he got to the front at Martinsville, but it was enough. I was like, okay, 5 positions in the first stage. I think that works out pretty well. There's a long race to go. But yeah, I was satisfied. I wasn't excited, but I was satisfied with that movement.
Well, like we said, stage points didn't matter, and we're looking at is just trying to move up by the end of the race. So, pitting in 10th, coming out 8th. I've got a 9.7 stop here, and some of the other guys a 10.3, a 9.9, and a 10.0. So, he gained a couple spots on a couple guys just on their pit stop. Roger does get on the radio and tell good job everyone, and then he tells Ryan everyone was having problems on the track, so he kind of comes in, and when he does come in, he comes in as the voice of reason a little bit. Ryan's not going to argue with him on the radio or anything, but he gives you information that you probably needed to hear. You're not the only one out there, and everybody else is having issues too, and you're doing a good job with what you've got.
That's kind of what I said in our early conversation, was that he mentions all race long about this rear grip issue. And it's like literally every single car is having this problem. It's not just you.
Yeah. Jonathan said he did a little bit of a wedge and air adjustment here. On the restart here, 24 takes the bottom, Ryan takes the top, and, they start out, which he's actually in a spot in front of the 20 and 9th there. The 20 was 9th, and, 24 was leading and the 5 was 4th. So the restart lap 69, it gets up to 6th on this restart. Lap 71 passes the 23 up to 5th. Lap 88, the 20 does pass him. He's back to 6th here, and, talks about he's running behind the 5 at one point, and the 5 is doing some air blocking on him.
This is the beginning of what we can describe as the sassiness, or the he's a little bit short. I mean, that unfortunately in this race, and then even in the descriptions of it after, and some columns that were written, like, people really want to focus on Ryan getting heated behind the wheel, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the Chastain part. But this is, for all those of us that have followed him his whole career, especially the last 3 or 4 years, like, this is nothing new. It's kind of part of his process. He's got enough people around him to get over it and focus that energy forward in a different direction. But yeah, this is a kind of the start of it, and it makes for some good TV. Audio and clips after, though.
Well, that's the thing. Now, TV is concentrating on 4 people, correct? And they love going to the radio for this. But the truth is listen to the other 30 some radios every week, and you're going to hear this out of half the guys. He's not the only one that gets frustrated or vocalizes his frustration. As long as they're doing it with the vocal part and not doing it with the car, and he's not the only one. That's the part that amazes me about how all these stories are written, or all these questions are asked, and they talk about tempers. There's a lot of guys that have tempers, as we're going to see later on. There are a lot of guys that like to show you that they have a temper, So, lap 95 here, the 5 is now blocking the 20. At lap 96, Ryan does a twofer. He passes the 20 and the 5, gets up to 4th by going down
awesome
on the dog leg, right?
Scary.
He just cuts
Scary.
a left. Cuts a left down the dog leg, and then he gets down to turn 1, and he's below and underneath, and then cuts them both off.
The 20 absolutely cuts Ryan a break in this move, though, and I think it's because they knew they had more time to battle here. But if the 20 doesn't lift here, Ryan might have taken out both of them, but
Both of
hey,
them.
it made for a great moment, and
Mhm.
you could tell. So I was talking about Ryan focusing that energy and that frustration, and he focused it all the way into one heck of a move that that got him all the
Mhm.
way up to the up toward the front end. Like I said, oh, that slow methodical march forward. We get to that second stage, it's like a rocket ship to the
Mhm.
front.
Yeah, lap 100 here. Josh tells him that him and the one are the best ones out there right now. And Ryan says we still need more rear grip. At lap 103, we're gaining on the 24. And, Roger gets on the radio and tells him, you're better than him. Just take your time. At lap 107, he passes the 24, gets to third. Um, I think Roger comes on here and says, take care of the car and the tires. Lap 109, we get a caution for the 20 blowing the rotor. And yeah, this was a weird situation. You got a little theory on this. You're just kind of guessing about setups that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have mentioned that, oh, it's unfortunate Bell gets knocked out by a random mechanical failure with this next gen car. And I know they've made changes over the last couple of years as we've run it, but there's been multiple times at a couple specific tracks where teams have kind of pushed the limits on their brake package, and they do have some options when it comes to brake packages in the way that they cool their brakes. And if you get aggressive, there's a possibility that you're going to cook them basically, and the rotor can fail. So my theory is that the 20, honestly, out of the championship four was probably the fourth seed. They were kind of running under the radar. They thought maybe they could use that to their advantage and go and steal the championship, but I think that also pressured them into putting in a very aggressive setup that included brakes. And unfortunately, it bit them. Now, I could be totally wrong. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know all the things, but I paid attention enough this year and the last couple of years that when we've had brake rotor failures, it's mostly been a team issue and their aggressiveness when it comes to the setup and the cooling and all those things that go into a brake package. So on the plus side now, we are only the 12 team is only going to be battling two other drivers now instead of three. And we just saw over a long run, the 24 and the 5 fade and the 12 move forward. And my optimism was pegged at
Mhm.
this moment because I said, if this could play out like we said last week in our preview of this race, long green flag runs, it's going to work out just like it did at Martinsville. He's going to methodically get to the front and he's going to win the championship. And we're seeing that kind of play in front of our eyes. And it was really, really rewarding at that point in the race to see. One other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if it was at this point, but it was kind of around this point in the race that Jeff Gluck kind of puts a tweet out that says, can we please go back to Homestead, or can we please move the championship race somewhere else? Because outside of, and it might have been even after this a little bit longer, like people kind of were seeing the typical Phoenix race that we've seen the last few years, where outside of the restarts, it's not super exciting, even though we're watching the 12 car pass people. And I don't know how people don't notice that, especially with the coverage they had on TV, but it's still that typical, it's too hard to pass. Nobody's passing. But in my opinion, people are passing. Ryan's passing people. The good cars are passing people. And you mentioned from watching the in car, guys are trying all different lanes. So
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if maybe if it, I'm going to be totally biased on this race just because of the outcome. So maybe that has tinted my glasses a little bit rosier. And the finish of this race, I think, saves it, though, still based on the poll that he had on Monday. It still wasn't seem to be super widely loved
Yeah.
by fans. But
Which
I
I
don't know.
was
What were your thoughts
surprised
on the
by that.
racing?
I was surprised about that too because the winner is very extremely popular. So usually the poll's affected by the winner too, or the championship winner at least. So. But yeah, I think they need to go to Homestead. Go back to Homestead. The aero package, the way it is right now, unless they can figure something out between now and next year, that totally changes it. There was just so much air blocking type racing here, whereas at least on some of the mile and a halves now, they still do a little bit of it on some of the mile and a halves. But really, truthfully, if you can get a mile and a half like Homestead was run, where it widens out into a couple lanes, and they have to come together coming off the corner off different lanes, and somebody gets more momentum. Yeah, you see a lot less of that because you see somebody actually make a nice momentum pass. off of running a couple good laps in a row.
I'd love Homestead. I'd love to see it. I love it in general. What I can tell you from attending 2 championship races at Homestead and multiple just standard playoff races, and even in that's one-off spring race that they did at one point there. Racing is great. The fan attendance is not great. Even when I saw Jimmy Johnson win his last championship there, I saw Kyle Busch win his second championship there. That one actually had a little bit more people there than the Jimmy title run did. But it just, I don't know if it's because it is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It is very close to Miami though, so it has that going for it. But the racing is great. I think the facility is pretty good. It's not as good as what looks like they have out there at Phoenix. And it seats more people, I'm pretty sure, than Phoenix. So that's one thing Phoenix has when they talk about it selling out all the time. It doesn't really actually have that big of a capacity. So I understand why they're in the Phoenix market. It sells out. It looks great. The facility, they put a ton of money into it. Racing maybe would be better at Homestead, though. I would say, Ryan finished second in this Homestead race, a few races ago. It wasn't necessarily a barn burner of a race, and the 20 kind of drove off with it at the end. So, but it was probably overall better. It's just, does NASCAR care? Do they care? One. And do they care about attendance? Or do they just care about the on-track product? Or do they want to be in, Phoenix is as far as bowl games and some other things, it's a pretty big championship town. And I understand why they're there. But who knows? That's a conversation for another day. I just don't think there's a few tracks that NASCAR can even go to because they don't want to give the championship race to SMI. So you really only have Phoenix, Homestead, and maybe one or two others that they can go out there right now based on the climate and temperature. So, but anyway, I just thought it was interesting the way Gluck, I think he even mentioned it in their, teardown podcast, that he felt like an idiot after he posted that. And then the way the strategies change and the drama totally changes with the racing that we're going to talk about. So I know I'm going off track, but it was an interesting tidbit that happened in the middle of this thing when it seemed really boring, but after this caution, things are about to pick up.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of did that because it kind of, we didn't want to really talk about the next set of pit stops anyway.
So you mentioned that this race kind of being a microcosm of the season, and we haven't shied away from the struggles that Ryan has had at times, the struggles they've had at strategy sometimes, the struggles they've had on pit road at sometimes. We don't sugarcoat it. We try to present the facts to you of what happens. And the fact is, this is a high-level sport, high-level motorsports. There is easily small errors can cost you when you're trying to do a pit stop in 10 seconds and under. And unfortunately, this specific set of pit stops, we do have a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and it's not just him either, because, the 5 car does a 10.4. Okay, and Ryan does an 11.1, which is a little, about a second more than they really want to be. So they come in third and they go out seventh. But once again, this is one of those things where you take a deep breath. Josh always says, "Get a drink of water, get a drink," and I think that's part of like a thing where they just kind of reset.
Still early too.
Yeah, the leader is the 4 taking the bottom. And Ryan in 7th takes the top here. And the restart lap 117 settles into 7th, right behind the 5 car. At lap 120, the 1 does take the lead away. But lap 130, they're trying a bunch of different lines, both ends, about 2 to 3 tenths back of the 5 car. Lap 136, the 19 passes the 24. So now we got the 24 is in 5th. The 5 is in 6th, Ryan's in 7th, they're all right there, all within, a second of each other, 3 cars, lap 152, we pass the 5, get to 6th. Roger gets on, says, "Good job there. Take your time." Ryan says, "I just need silence." Now this is after something Josh said, not after Roger. Josh was giving him, I think, the line of one of the guys behind him. And Ryan just kind of wanted to concentrate at this point. At lap 160, he's closing on the 24. At lap 172, the 17 actually took the lead. Ryan was 4 tenths back of the 24. Lap 178, the 24 and the 19 are racing in front of Ryan. And, the the last lap of the stage here. The 17 wins the stage, the 24 finishes 4th, the 12 finishes 6th, and the 5 finishes 7th. So here we go, going into the final stage. They're running right next to each other. Ryan kind of says, "I don't know how I got that loose." They're going in 6th. They come out 5th. Okay, so the pit times weren't showing up on the TV at this point. I could go back in and dig them up, but they're all within,
how quickly things change. They totally, they go from a little bit of a low there, a little bit of a stumble on that last pit stop.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a very resilient 12 pit crew.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of passion, a lot of heart, talented guys that are good enough to put out good pit stops and great pit stops every once in a while. And honestly, something Denny Hamlin said about his pit crew throughout the year, all he wants them to do is just keep him in it. +1, -1, that's okay. He doesn't want to have like what the 12 team had the previous stop, but that's all I was looking for, was just solid stops. And we kind of get that the rest of the day. And that was, thankfully, that's the way it happened. And it was great to see them bounce back and gain a spot in the sequence.
Yeah. The one's the leader taking the bottom. Ryan takes the bottom from 5th here. The 24 is P2 and the 5 is P4. So, everybody did really well in their pit stops. They all kind of moved up a little bit. Restart lap 193 here. They soared out to 4th here, passing the 5 car. Lap 200, the 24 is in 2nd, Ryan's in 4th, and the 5 car's in 5th. The 19 is the car running in 3rd in there, in between. Lap 207, we passed the 19 to get to 3rd. Lap 211, we passed the 24 to get to 2nd. Lap 217, closing on the leader. Josh gets on there, tells him we're the fastest car here. Lap 227, Ryan says, I hope he's proud of himself. And I think this is in reference to the way that he's blocking him, doing this arrow block thing. Lap 2.
And this is the one car you're talking about, right?
Yeah. The one car. I'm sorry. Yeah. The lap 230, they tell him we're about 10 or 15 away from pitting here. But at lap 240, they pit. So what happened is the 5 and the 24 actually hit pit road the lap before, and Jonathan brings him in to kind of match that. And, lap 243 here, Ryan actually asked, did they pit? And they tell him, yes, it was the lap before. But it kind of all sorts out. By lap 253, they sort out to P2 behind the 1 car again. And this is the green flag pit stop. We had kind of discussed this earlier. The green flag pit stop happens, and they cycle out. They cycle out in front of them like they should. And they've actually starting to gap them a little bit here too, which they should. And pretty much from here on out, should be, as long as it stays green. The only thing I
just want a long run. All we want is a long run to the end. Go home with the championship. Cruise to victory.
That's it.
Stay green. Worst case scenario is a caution coming out.
Yeah. So Josh gets on there and says, hey, let's go get the 1 and get the win. Lap 258 here. We're messing with the 1 and the 19. And this is that part where he bumped him, and he bumped him. And what's bad about it is, you don't want to mess up your race. You're racing the other 2 guys. You're not even racing the 1. You're racing the other 2 guys that are still in it, and you're ahead of them. Don't mess up your race. But on the other hand, he bumped him just right to make the pass on him. What he didn't count on is the 19 putting his nose up there and made him 3 wide. And now you don't want to be in the middle of 3 on this track trying to pass either of those guys.
What are your thoughts? I just want to just briefly chat. And I think in the previous sequence, we talked about Ryan losing his cool a little bit on the radio. During this battle with the 1, he's really animated in the car. He may or may not flip a bird at one point. Yeah. He bumps the 1, but he's also had an issue with the 19. I think under the previous caution, he bumped the 19 under caution. This is the first race that I can remember in this championship 4 era where, and I don't think it was just Ryan, it was even the 5 and the 24, they were being raced extremely hard by their competitors, whereas in years past, and I'm not saying this is right and this is what they should have done, but in years past, they have been given an extreme amount of space to race for the championship. And it just seemed like this year, everybody was like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing because there's no written rule that says they have to back off. There's no written rule that says you just, but they do tell them you don't want to affect the championship. And this is the part that, people get in arguments about on Twitter and everything about Chastain air blocking and Ryan, saying what he says later on about it. And what those people are not understanding is Ryan was faster than the one. The one was doing things to not let him by. And in the meantime, the 5 car and the 19 actually, because the 19 was right behind him, but he was, by doing all this, causing all those cars to catch up with him, with the 1 car. And I don't want to use the word dumb, but it's dumb because sooner or later, all those guys are going to be up there ganged up on you because they were all faster than you. The statistical thing that they do, like I said, the racing analytics thing shows you that he was the 5th fastest of all those guys. The 1 car was. He was holding them off based on the fact that that's the style of racing that, that they're kind of trapped in with this car. But you're going to hurt the championship by doing this also, because now you've made it where all the championship guys are up your butt and racing each other, and they shouldn't have been. If you let the 12 by, and probably the 19 too, because the 19 was better than you, and then the 5 comes up and the 5 passes you because he's better than you. I know you don't win your race, but you don't affect the championship either. You let the guys who are racing for a championship race, literally race. Those guys, the 3 of them that were still in it, raced each other quite cleanly for the most part. They may have bumped into each other a little bit here and there on a restart or two, but they did not do a lot of this aero blocking that the 1 was doing. They passed somebody and they made their pass. They made their move. They got around them, so.
Was there a point at all where, so this was my thoughts, was at first I'm yelling at Ross in my living room at the TV for doing what he's doing. But then I quickly switched to not yelling at Ryan, but I'm just concede here. Just run second, run right on this guy's bumper the rest of the way and win the championship. Because if you keep doing this, as you said, the 19 closes in, the 5 closes in, everybody closes in when these guys get battling side by side. So at any point, and I think the team's even telling Ryan, you don't have to win the championship.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was in that zone too. I'm just back off, just please.
Well, like I was about to say here, at lap 261, Ryan asks them to keep him updated on the 5. And he moved back to 3rd. So what he did is he let the 19 go because the 19 had made that move, made it real dangerous. And Ryan got smart about not wrecking his car just to race those guys. And, they got, they kind of got spread out again. And, lap 267, he's got almost 2-second lead on the 5 still with 45 to go. And at lap 269, he passes the 19 again to get to 2nd. So he let everything cool off. He got it back together. And then he started going back to the front again, because he was faster than these guys. And in the next couple laps, he does actually pass Chastain. He does not block him. He could have really blocked him, but then again, Chastain, the way he was running, might have knocked him out of the way. So he had to be careful of that danger. Chastain pulls off a move where he kind of crosses over and gets it back, which is great racing that in that manner. And then the caution actually comes out at lap 275 for the 8 car. So this caution
absolute
here,
worst case scenario.
Totally, because if you let it go, he's going to get to the 1 and pass the 1 at some point again. He'll get patient. He'll back off for a little bit, cool it down again, but he'll get by him. And he'd already put the 19 between him and the 5, which is perfect. The more cars you put between you and your competitors, they got to pass them. That's great. So if it stays green here, I think we're, looking at probably winning the race too, because I think he would have got to the 1 finally in the next, whatever laps.
And in this sequence that you're about to read off, the worst case scenario plays out too. And I mentioned it again. I'm 100% behind the 12 pit crew, but I do think when they're going heads up and the heads up with, again, an elite driver like Kyle Larson too, because you will hopefully mention this as well. There's more than just the pit stop that goes into the sequence, but you're going up against an elite driver, a championship winning driver and crew in Kyle Larson. You're going up against the 24 and William Byron, who has the number one pit stall that they said was a few tenths, would gain them a few tenths on every pit stop. So yeah, I'm like, okay, the worst case scenario, Ryan is going to come out behind at least one of these guys, possibly two, and Chastain's already out front in the one pit crew all last year and much of this year. Really, really awesome pit crew. So I thought this was my fault. I was so excited. I thought Ryan's battle with Chastain was also my fault for being way too excited about the prospect of Ryan winning a championship. I already had my social media posts running through my head. What am I going to post at the end of this? How many pictures can I collect? And, how awesome is this going to be? And I felt like I was being punished, because this caution comes out and jinxes things. And that I'm a little bit superstitious. So I was a little bit down on myself. I'm watching the worst case scenario play out. And then now tell us what happens on these pit stops. Cause it's not even them. There's just some other strategies that happen during this part.
That's the funny part, is that TV did a really good job of explaining this, and they usually don't. They usually just show you the time, but they show the running time. They show how long these cars are on pit road. And okay, so the 12's pit stop time was actually 9.9. It was sub 10. Pretty good. The 5 car, 9.5, so 4/10 faster. Really good. But they show you the running time down pit road, and the 5 car was like 6 or 7/10 faster on that. And that just means that he was able to hit his lights better, or maybe not be quite as conservative. I don't know which, because, pitting on this pit road is dangerous because they've got a bend at the one end, and you have to change lights in the different segments going around the bend. And that can affect, what your speed is like. And literally Ryan, they always run that down pit road before the race. And, for 10, 15 seconds afterward, Jonathan will get on and tell him, you did this, you did that, or it looks good, or you can do that all day. But there was a segment, down near the turns 1 and 2 where he said something to him about something. And Ryan says, yeah, I was a little over the light. I was trying to adjust it. And so he may have been more conservative just based on that, not wanting to get a penalty. And
much like Homestead, same thing. Like, absolutely, he does not want to throw a championship away because he speeds on pit road. There was 30 laps to go. Maybe he can get back to the front in some miracle. But on the other hand, the 5 and the 24, I don't want to say they have nothing to lose, but if anybody's going to be aggressive on this pit stop as far as pushing the limits on their lights, it's going to be them. And the 5 said in his post-race interview that he thought he was the best on his lights all day long, and that showed in that graphic that they put up there that said his rolling speed was much better than the rest of the field here. So start a little bit behind on this restart, and I was nervous.
We get the 11 and the 43 taking 2 tires in here too, so that totally kind of jacks up everything, So really, because he goes in, but second, comes out 6th, but technically he would have come out 4th, so he only would have lost a spot or 2, and it would have been to those 2 guys though. So the 11's the leader, taking the bottom, Ryan taking the top, and this makes the restart really hairy because the 2 tire thing is quite the gamble, and realistically it's not going to work. Within 2 or 3 laps it doesn't work, and they restart lap 280. 5 and the 24 are on the bottom here, and really early on Ryan's racing the 24, passing the 11, passing the 24, and he gets right behind the 5 within the first lap or 2.
Scary moment though when he's passing the 24. This got really aggressive. 24's wrapping the bottom. Ryan tries to pinch him down as far as he possibly can. They're making slight contact, and I'm thinking just a little bit more of a nudge, and Ryan's going around. And honestly, I think the 24 would be driving right into his door. So, oh man, that was so scary. But the fact that he was able to get past the 24 here so quickly was a pivotal moment in this championship victory right here, because if he had to spend more time passing the 24 and then getting to the 5 and having to spend all that time, there's only 30 something laps to go. I mean, the time was running out.
Yeah. Lap 285 is P3 behind the 5. Lap 290, he's running right next to the 5 here. And at lap 292, he passes the 5, gets to P2 with the 1 leading. And
Great battle.
It was side by side. You weren't going to complete the pass in a lap. Sometimes you ran side by side for 2 or 3 laps, and Ryan drove to the outside on him and got outside on him and did some
scary moment.
Oh yeah, they kind of ran into each other.
The 5, I think they may be a little bit slight contact, but also the 5 goes to, I think, go down into the apron and nearly spins out. And Ryan's pretty confident that if the 5 spins out here, he was going to get collected into turn 2 with this. So freaked me out, but also that's actually what made Ryan make the pass, and I think in the next turn. So I mean, back again here. I'm Mr. Confidence again after that, but it took a little while though. The 5 hung with Ryan. He got to his bumper 2 or 3 more times before he eventually checked out. But it was enough to where I was thinking, man, if that caution had come out with 15 to go or 10 to go, the 5 probably would have raced even more aggressively. It could have been some trouble.
Really, really great here because this is where Josh comes into play here because he's giving him. Ryan is watching the mirror to some extent, but Josh is telling him exactly where the 5 ran in the corner and did this and did that, and letting Ryan know that he's clear coming out of the corner. And for that next, from lap 292 to 302, that's exactly what you're talking about, like where he kind of gains on it a little bit and then loses it on exit, gains into the corner, loses it on exit. So it looks a little closer for a little bit, and then Ryan spreads it back out. And Ryan just starts clicking off these consistent, really, really good laps, running the line he wants to run, not worrying about where the 5 is. And by lap 302, he's got him. Josh says you're up by 10, which is a couple tenths by that point. And that is my last note that I actually took for the rest of the race. The next 10 laps, basically, watch the TV.
You're in a glass case of emotion at that point, right?
We were standing. We both stood up. We both, I had Josh's thing on my phone, listening to him, put it up to our ears, and then just watched the rest from there. And, got to that exciting finish, brought to you by Credit One or whatever. And
so describe your, we might mention this too when we talk about what Ryan's thoughts were. And my wife was a little bit confused with my reaction because I was much more subdued. I will mention that, comfortable saying some tears were shed, much like there was a little bit last week at Martinsville as well. But I felt like I got all of my ecstatic jumping up and down, shouting, screaming, cheering out at Martinsville. And when he wins the championship here, she kind of described it as I was just taking it all in. And I kind of felt that's how I was. That was my initial reaction. I wasn't on my feet. I was on the edge of my seat, assuming the worst was going to happen and there was going to be one more restart because like the 15, blows a tire and goes into, or somebody, we just made that pit stop. Somebody's wheel goes flying off, like something crazy. I was even worried that it would be like the 2 or the 22, like the 22 would actually accidentally spin somebody. Like it was just and it would be self-inflicted on the team, but that didn't happen. Ryan Blaney pulls away because he had the best car. He had the best driver at this track, go out and win this race. And Steve, I have to say, one of the things that made this championship victory, unfortunately doesn't win the race, so special is that he faced adversity on that final pit stop because they're just slightly slower with their stop and their rolling time. A couple of guys take 2 tires, so they lose track position. And I think I texted you that this is in the driver's hands now. And Ryan Blaney, who has been criticized in the past for not being able to close out races, for not being able to rise to the occasion, went toe-to-toe with Kyle Larson, who is, I would say undoubtedly, most likely one of the absolute best drivers of a race car on this planet, went toe-to-toe with Kyle Larson, a champion in this series, and beat him and took the championship away from everybody's favorite drivers.
Yes. We were on our feet and, we kind of grab each other And then I start to just think about watching the celebration and watching the different people, because we got to see faces that we've gotten to know from doing this in the last couple of years. And just, basically wanted to give all those guys all the credit in the world. Ryan's behind the wheel. Ryan executes. But Team 12, and Jonathan calls them team period 12 period. If you ever look, there's actually a period at the end of each one. And those are those guys that put together everything that they could to make sure that card did that at the end, and it just so great to see all those guys just hugging each other, jumping up and down,
That's all. I mean, you're right. That's all I was looking for in that celebration. I'm seeing Tony Palmer. I'm seeing Raymond, seeing Dave Nichols, seeing Josh Williams, seeing Chris Conklin, all these guys that have, and more that have given their time to us just to come in and chat with us and tell their story and give us some insight on this 12 team. Jonathan Hassler joined us earlier in the year. Obviously, Ryan Blaney, who helped us celebrate our 100th episode earlier this season, seeing him celebrate a NASCAR Cup Series championship, seeing the Blaney family, Dave, Lisa, Emma, Aaron, who was talked about so much through this week because of her connections to William Byron, is a fellow competitor of Ryan's for this championship. I mean, seeing Dave smile, photo that Jeff Gluck posted of Dave kind of watching from the back of the room in the media center as Ryan's doing it took me back to all those days. And I made a really heartfelt post as what I would call our main post on Facebook that talked about Lou and Dave and Dale and all of these longtime fans of this family, because I feel like most of us are fans of the whole family, from them, from the women that support them. It took me back to where we met, the Quickest Lap forum days, the race chat room from back in the days. I was even, kind of dug up. There's still a little group on Facebook for Quickest Lap alums that I would say, all those folks that when I was a young fan of Dave, that we interact with back then, it's just said, this championship, Ryan reaching the pinnacle of motorsports in America. This is for everybody that stuck behind Dave back then and had the best fun that we could have, celebrating a top 5 here and there, celebrating a top 10 as if it was almost a victory, stuck it out. And he brings along his son, Ryan Blaney, who, in just 10 or 12 years time in NASCAR National Series is a champion of the sport. And it was hard not to get too emotional, and we'll play a clip too where Ryan talks about his emotions kind of getting the best of him, but I just cannot. It's I almost feel like I'm still in shock. Like I do kind of feel like at some point I am going to have a little bit more of an excited jumping up and down celebration. I think just seeing the photos him with the trophy and everything afterwards. I tried my best. I did listen to the teardown, but I haven't listened to anybody else or really read too much into it because I wanted to make sure we kind of came into this show fresh and had our own opinions that weren't influenced by anybody else. So much like when I've watched my other favorite sports teams win, I'm going to consume all of the content possible. And I'm hope for those that have been listening all year long and for all 3 years that we've been doing this podcast, that we're also going to be part of that celebration, that all the fans out there of Ryan Blaney and Team 12 and Team Penske, we're celebrating right alongside you. So we talked a lot about some of these clips from these post-race press conferences that they had all night long that I watched while we patiently waited for Tech to finish, which seemed like forever. I'm filling up my Fanatics cart with t-shirts and hats, and I'm afraid to push the button on buying it until I know for sure that they've passed Tech. You have to remember that they have to do an engine teardown with the Xfinity and Truck Series. They actually waited a day to do that, but with the Cup Series, I think they want to get it all done in one night. Let everybody know. There's a point in the night when Bob Pockris, is getting asked about Tech, and he says they're still in the middle of the engine teardown, but Blaney is doing interviews, so that's a good sign. So I know we had our friend Justin Bosch there was called in as a backup hauler driver.
Mhm.
I think to that, so that way I think the regular hauler drivers might have a chance to celebrate and imbibe a little bit. Said he was our good luck charm. I was so close to trying to pick up the phone and call him and ask him to, hey, can you help speed this process along? So, spoiler alert, they passed tech. And Ryan Blaney, as you said, is a 2023 champion. Here's what he had to say about that final run and the pit stop and the track position and what he had to do to go out and win the race.
We didn't really have a bad pit stop. Those guys just had lightning fast stops. And, it's like, man, well, that kind of stinks. But then you just immediately shift to, all right, this is the task. Like, this is my new job. This is what we have to do. And I think getting around the 24 early was huge, right, to where I didn't have to pass two of them. It just let me set my sights on Kyle, and was able to get a pretty good run there and get to his outside. When he got to the apron, it looks like he almost spun out getting to the apron, trying to not let me get to his bottom, and I thought we were going to possibly wreck off a two, but it was tight. But no, it's just, hard racing between two guys. I have a ton of respect for Kyle, and so it's fun to race him for the championship like that.
Yeah, so kind of some of the things we echoed in our race recap there, the fact that he lost that track position. He wasn't super upset because he understood the position that they were in, but it actually gave him an opportunity to focus forward. That's kind of one of the Penske catchphrases that they talk about every year, and focus on what that next mission was going to be. Luckily, he gets past the 24 quickly and then sets his sights on the 5 car going forward. So anything to add to that clip?
No, I mean, he explained it pretty well. The focus forward thing is really, really the coolest thing. And like I said earlier about, like, sometimes Josh would say, get a drink right now, same type of thing, just kind of reset. And, this is something we talked about as a team, that, overcoming adversity, it happens, these things happen. And how do you respond to them? How do you show your character? And what do you do when the pressure's on you to take care of business? And he definitely explained that really well there.
When the pressure was off, Ryan had a little bit more fun in the media center. And we saw a little bit of a spicy Ryan the last couple of, so after he won after Martinsville, when he was asked about, his lucky streak during the playoffs, he didn't really like that too much. And here he's been asked about the contact with Ross Chastain and whether it was intentional or not. And I know this has been played on social media all over the place because it's pretty funny, but here's Ryan's take on that contact and the hard racing with Chastain and why he did what he did.
Well, right, I hit him on purpose. I mean, yeah. Yes, I hit him on purpose. He blocked me on purpose 10 times. So, yeah, I hit him on purpose. I mean, what do you expect me to do? He's backing me up to the other championship guy, and I got to go. I mean, we were just racing hard, but did I think he was over excessive on the blocks? Yes, very much so. And, yes, did I hit him? Yes, I did. But that's just part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that kind of encapsulated how we felt in that moment, but it did, and we talked about this in the recap, it stressed me out because I was concerned that this was a mistake, that racing Ross was a mistake, racing him so hard was a mistake, especially trying to punt him there. Man, I was like, in the moment, I wasn't sure that was so great. But luckily, between Josh and Jonathan and another fellow, there's a lot of calming voices that could help Ryan kind of refocus there. And throughout the race, and we see this mostly after the IndyCar season is over, Roger Penske's at the track a lot. You mentioned it earlier that he got on the radio a few times. He was on the radio, and it's usually just during stage breaks, but there's points in this race where Roger got on the radio while the race was actively going on here. And Roger was kind of asked about that communication in the media center following the victory.
Well, I guess other than the spotter, I have the right to give him a couple shots one way or the other. I think that, he was running fine. I think a little bit he was, concerned that he was being backed up by the one obviously to the 5, which he really wasn't. But it just calming him down. He was doing a great job. The guys, Jonathan, the team, good pit stops, good strategy on getting that car right. It's more to say, hey, you're doing a great job. I told him before the race, win, lose, or draw, you're a champion.
Love that comment. And you can't tell Roger Penske what to do or what not to do. And I think you mentioned Ryan's not going to argue with him. There's been a couple of times in this playoff run where Roger's kind of come on and said some things that I'm like, maybe Ryan doesn't want to hear at that moment. But I do think, he hears the captain in his ear. He knows that he's in his corner. And like he said, he told him before the race even started, no matter what happens today, you're a champion. And I think that was really important for him to hear. Were you concerned at all about, the boss coming on when you hear Ryan already has Jonathan in his ear and Josh in his ear and anybody else?
No, he kind of picked his spots. From what I'm hearing and what I've heard in the past, even he kind of picked his spots and came on at the right moment with the right thing to say. Some things that really, Josh doesn't necessarily have the time to deal with. Josh is not your cheerleader. Josh is definitely your facts guy and trying to give you info. But Roger come on once or twice to just tell him, you're not the only one having a problem. Everyone's having a problem. And not in a way that was being mean to him or not. It was just like, hey, don't worry as much. Everybody's fighting what you're fighting. And you're fighting it better than anybody else. That's so he gave those kind of encouraging things. And it was always at the right moment.
One other thing that I really think helped Ryan kind of battle through this moment and rise to the occasion on such a grand stage in the sport was the winless season last year, which, they did win the All-Star race. I feel like was really important for the growth of this 12 team. And we might not have seen that as it was happening. But the mistakes and issues that he had in the playoffs last year, I think definitely helped him during this playoff run and getting through the frustrating parts of this race. And he had some thoughts on kind of leaning on what he learned in the playoff run last year.
We had a good shot to get here last year, and I made mistakes, at Vegas and Miami that kept us out. And, that was pretty brutal, for me, for our whole group, right? Whenever you are the one personally making those mistakes, you take it the harshest, right? But, everyone on the 12 group supported me really well, and we just kind of set into, hey, what do we need to do to get better, right? Where are the areas we need to get better? And we did that over the off season and was able to get here this year. So I think we learned a lot from last year from multiple sides.
Yeah, this is something I've said before. Couple things, his humility there to actually just come out and say that, those things happened last year were on him. How many drivers would really say that kind of stuff? A lot of these guys try to be type A personalities, even when they're not. But for him to realize, recognize, and then overcome it, then learn from it and overcome it, and treat the team guys the same way. The people, we're not going to go totally negative, but the people who make statements about, well, the team did this wrong or the team did that wrong. These guys are human too, and they do make mistakes. But the thing is, they learn from it, they get better, and hopefully start to, perform at an even higher level. And everybody, on that whole team 12 did that, and Ryan recognizes that as well as anybody else. And, he rose to the occasion. Everybody else rose to the occasion. It was really, really good to see that, everybody could grow together and mature together, in the right direction.
Now, one other obstacle all of Team Penske, and for what many people thought was all of Ford Motor Company, or at least the Ford drivers in the Cup Series had to get over, was a speed issue. They made some changes to the nose early in the season. They thought that was going to help their handling and overall speed in the car. But they really kind of struggled out of the gate, and we didn't see this 12-team win until the Coca-Cola 600, which oddly enough was at a track that you really did have to have really great handling and speed at. So Ryan kind of was asked about this in the post-race about whether he was concerned during that summer slump, I'll call it, that they would ever actually get over that hump and find the speed that they needed to make a championship run.
when RFK started running well, Busher won those 3 races. Brad started running really good. It's like, all right, well, it's there. It's the speed and the Fords are out there. These guys found it. What are we missing? We took that as a challenge. Okay, these guys have figured out a way to make what we thought was an uncompetitive car winning cars. So we can't blame that anymore. So let's just go to work. So I didn't really ever have that thought in the summer months, even when we were struggling, right? You just try to do the best you can of giving information on where we need to be better, whether that's from an engine side, aero side, setup side. You just try to do the work, and you understand that this sport you're going to be, on top for a little while, and then other teams are going to find something. You're going to go to the bottom for a little while. You just have to keep working hard, and that's what I love about this group is they don't ever get down on themselves. They just do the work and they just figure it out, and that's what they did. And so I never had a doubt in them. I mean, there was a lot of tough conversations. It was like, hey, we gotta do something, or we're not going to be competitive at all in the playoffs. And everyone jumped on the opportunity to dig down deep, and that's what they did, and wound up here.
Yeah, I mean, we may never know exactly what the things were, but definitely the last 5-6 weeks of the year here, so they found something. They found something that got them back to being the top Ford on the track. And then by being that top Ford, they were competitive with everybody else.
Yeah, and Jonathan Hassler was asked about this like what did they do to find the speed? And doesn't really have a ton of insight into it, but he kind of echoes Ryan's statements when he says, kind of they put their head down, they went to work, and they eventually found it, and it definitely helped them get to the championship race and ultimately win. So here's what kind of he said about what they were able to tweak when it came to set up things and just to find speed in this race car that they thought at the beginning of the year they weren't going to be able to find.
Speaking to the development through the year, it's really not one area. There's a lot of little things that you can do to these cars, and you got to make the right decision on each one of those little things along the way. And, I think the adage is, pennies make, nickels make dimes make, dollars. And you just kind of stack all those things up and try to put the best piece together you can at the end of the day.
Whoa. This isn't stacking pennies here, but that's the sentiment. That's the sentiment that he had. He basically, they are in such a small box with this next gen car, and it really can be just the tiniest thing that could put them over the hump and give them that advantage when it comes to their competitors.
Well, unlike stacking pennies, he's talking about the next level. Once you've stacked enough pennies, that you went to the bigger denomination.
Yeah.
But this man does not get enough credit for what he's done in 2 short years. Once again, not going to get into a lot of negative with people online, but you give people time to show what they can do and put things together. And, there might be something in one of Ryan's comments later if they talk about him, or maybe you don't have it, but where he talks about the leadership that the man showed coming from a background of engineering. But on the other hand, engineering is something that was totally important with this next generation car, to have a guy who knew what to do with it. And, it just does not get enough credit for what he pulled off this year.
So one thing we joked about, especially after Martinsville, and we knew, or actually especially after Joey was knocked out of the playoffs, is this wingman thing. It comes up because we talked about Roger being on the radio. That was something that was said to Ryan over the radio during this Phoenix Championship race last year, that from Roger Penske that mentioned this wingman scenario, and Ryan has to be a good teammate. And when they're searching for this speed, where they're searching for great setups for these, especially the round of 8 in this championship race, Roger and Jonathan talk about the importance of having Joey Logano and Austin Cindric as teammates, and what their philosophy was, what their strategy was, and how to use those 2 teammates in practice, in simulation, to help move the 12 car forward. And I kind of thought this was interesting, the insight that they gave on this, and how those our 2 wingmen helped us out, and even Harrison Burton to some extent in the 21 car as well.
Well, I think number one, we knew what we had to do to have. He's in the championship Final Four. So when we came to the racetrack the last several weeks, everybody came the same way. So we had an opportunity, and then they had a certain element that they had to test on their car because, there's very little testing, very little practice. And I think that went into the notebook. And then Jonathan could take the plus and the minus, whether it was tire pressures, whether it was aero, whether it was springs or shocks. We had that ability to get that from really the three drivers plus what Harrison was doing. So to me, I think then that was key for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I agree entirely with Roger's assessment there. It was just making sure we show up the same, picking the highlights really from my list of kind of the things that I think we need to work on and get answers to and try to answer those questions and then put our best foot forward for the race.
Kind of makes me wonder how that worked for Hendrick. So they have two cars that ended up in the championship 4. Do you think the 5 and the 24 were really sharing all their notes? Maybe they were. Maybe that's something that Jeff and Chad made them do. But when it came to Team Penske, and I know the fans were calling for this, all assets, all resources needed to be put behind this 12 car to get it to win a championship. And it sounds like that's kind of the approach that they took.
Yeah, from practice to qualifying, to hear that about the practice especially was really, really interesting to understand that that's actually what they were doing, because I will watch practice times and was looking at what the other cars were doing to kind of see, especially Joey, because Joey's, already been a champion a couple times over. And, how did that 22 do? What did they do? And if the, practice times were comparable, maybe that they would change something in the 12 car, so yeah, it was definitely interesting to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, basically on what they were doing. And it definitely worked out for them.
So Ryan talked about this as well, that there's not many things that you can do that's a first for Roger Penske. He's won, I think this is his 44th National Series championship between IndyCar and NASCAR. So many accomplishments, so many Indianapolis 500s. People have already won the Daytona 500 for him. But what he's never done before in the Cup Series is have back-to-back championships. And Ryan was able to deliver that. So Roger talks a little bit about that and also what they did with Ford to find some speed and make this championship run possible.
Back-to-back shows the strength of our organization. We really weren't that strong in the middle part of the season, but as Jonathan and the engineering team, along with Ford, helped us get better and better. And you can see how well the Fords ran even here today. And I think it was a combination of many things. But for me personally, that's what we're here for. We love the competition. We love the stress, but also we like a day to sit down here like this and say we're champions.
Gotta love to hear that sentiment from the captain for sure. And you mentioned Jonathan and Ryan's working relationship, how they both work hard, how Jonathan might not get as much credit as he should. And Roger kind of talks about that relationship and how they put those two guys together and how it's grown into what it is today. And the fact that they're both standing there as both Cup champions. So here's what Roger had to say about that pairing.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months. You've seen that. And I think he's matured to be a champion. And when you see guys like Kyle Larson and you see Elliott come up to him in that winner's circle and congratulate him, he's a key guy in that garage area, and he'll set a lot of standards, for the other drivers coming up. And to me, he showed how good he is today to everybody, not just our team and Jonathan and myself, but when you think about Jonathan coming with us here, really had been with us a long time and having the chance to take that step up. We said, look, you and Blaney are going to get together. They didn't know. But they've been a tremendous, combination, and I think that's what we have at Indy too.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about Ryan's thoughts on Jonathan Hassler, and you said you didn't want to get into the negatives, but there are plenty of people, especially last year when they went winless, and this year, the first half of the year before the Coke 600, that kind of question his leadership or question his strategy. And, he's kind of like the head coach of a team, and we're fans of NFL teams and stuff. It's really easy to point blame at the head coach and say, we need a new guy, get him out of here, find somebody else. You never want to blame the players too often. And I can say, as far as Blaney fans go, they're very quick to defend Ryan when it comes to anything here. But I feel like you and I in this podcast have been big fans of Jonathan Hassler, and we knew what he had in him. And here's what Ryan thinks about his Team 12 crew chief.
Hassler's been fantastic. I mean, he's such a good guy, and he and I's personality are pretty similar. So when, Todd Gordon told me he was retiring after 2021, it's like, they gave me a lot of kind of leeway to pick, who I wanted. And Jonathan, I had my eye on because he crew chiefed the 21 car for the last half of the year in 21 and did a great job. And he's been around Penske for a long time. And, he and I just kind of went out one night and had dinner and just talked. And I really enjoyed how our conversations went and our personality meshed. And I knew he was a smart guy, and being able to work with him through the winter, of 21 into the new car. He's done a fantastic job. And, he was an engineer, so it's hard to go from an engineering role straight into crew chiefing. You're managing and you're leading 15 guys, and you're trying to keep them pumped up, and you're also think about setups with the engineers. You're trying to pump up the pit crew guys. You're trying to tell the mechanics what to do. It's like that role is tough to jump into. And it took him a little while to kind of get comfortable with that. But this year, it's kind of like what, internally I went to myself last year of what I can do better. He and I had the talks of like, hey, what can we both do better to make this more of a leadership role and for you to get more comfortable? And he embraced it. He's been fantastic to our whole group, and it's been fun. Been fun to work with him. He's just an awesome guy, and cool to have a really fun year with him.
Yeah, we've gotten to know a bunch of these guys, and Jonathan has been key to that actually. He's been very good and generous with us. But that's what we kind of wanted to tell people as this year went on, is get to know some of these guys, get to know what they were doing, because they were working hard, working toward a goal, and his leadership was showing that. And when it all comes culmination like this, it's really, really special. And it, by getting to know them, it really makes you feel really happy for them as a group. The team, like I said, team period 12 period that, he put that together. That's his thing. And he, and that's his stamp on things. And, his stamp is now, on that cup too.
Another special person that I think we're really happy for, proud of, and that's Dave Blaney. And when Ryan got to Team Penske, and especially when he got to the Cup Series, Ryan's kind of said that Dave kind of stepped back a little bit. He still calls him after every race. I think that's his first phone call, but he's not as hands-on as maybe he was when he was getting him up through the ranks, getting him that ride with Tommy Baldwin, maybe some of his Truck and Busch Nationwide Series at the time and Xfinity Series runs. But when he's spoken about his dad, Dave, during this playoff run, he has said he's been one of his biggest motivators. I don't even want to say a cheerleader, a motivator that's trying to put him in the right mindset to see a path forward. And Ryan talked about how much Dave stepped up during this playoff run and kept him focusing forward and has eyes on that championship.
He's been awesome, right? I mean, he's been not only someone I grew up, wanting to be like and wanting to, do his sport, obviously getting me started in racing, supporting me along the way, opened a lot of doors for me. And then for him to still be, supportive, when I'm an adult is great. So he's been, he went on, his whole thing was like through the playoffs was, I see the path, I can see the path to the championship. I can see it. And after we won Martinsville, he's like, it's lit up now. The path is lit up. And I think we drove through the gate tonight, so we have arrived. So it's just cool to have my whole family here, which was very special.
Dave was asked, I think by Jordan Bianchi and some other folks after this race, like, did you see it in Ryan Blaney as a driver that he could someday win the Cup Series championship? And Dave said pretty quickly that he saw it when he was about 14 years old. He said he saw he had the talent. He saw he had the drive. It was just going to take more than that to make it happen. So that's kind of, from a guy like Dave that's, accomplished a lot in his racing career, still winning on dirt tracks and sprint cars at a high level part-time. I know it's his son, but that was some really encouraging words and really some confidence that maybe he was able to instill in Ryan to help him out through this run.
Yeah, the post race, when we were looking at people, when we saw the whole family up on stage there, that was a moment, because when you talked earlier about how we've been following them all along, and I say following them, and we're talking about the family, we're talking about, Dave and Lisa, and then all the kids, and being at the track on a Saturday night on a dirt track somewhere, watching them race all the way to this level with his son now, and his sisters get to be there with them. It just made the whole night, put a bow on everything, basically.
And beyond Dave, Ryan had a little bit more to talk about his whole family and kind of where he stands now in that Blaney Racing family legacy, bringing in a little bit of an asphalt championship into a family that's found most of their success on dirt.
No, it's fantastic. Just coming from a racing family in general, right? Grandfather Lou winning a bunch, championships around, the Northeast, and Dad being the Outlaw champion. Dale winning the All-Star championship, and now for me to kind of add some asphalt into there is pretty good, because that's what I grew up doing. But I couldn't think of a better spot of my family being here, and them able to witness it, because they are just as much a part of it as I am. And not only my dad, my mom sacrificed more than you could imagine to make sure I could get to every race and do what I needed to do to get going. And I have two awesome sisters that support me. So it's pretty special to have them here.
Yeah, absolutely. Class act family all around. And he mentions his sisters, Emma and Aaron, who have both been guests on the podcast in the past, talking about foundation events and things like that. And yeah, Lisa, I know, Dave was out running in the Cup Series as Ryan was coming up through the ranks, and she's the one that was making sure he was getting to the track every week, getting his legend car out there, his quarter midget, everything he needed to do to keep progressing through those early stages of his racing career. So all of the Blaney women, Kate Blaney back there in Hartford, Ohio, great woman, great boss out there at Sharon Speedway for me during my years there. Class acts all around, and we can't be more proud to cheer and support a family like the Blaney family. And this week, with the stories that have come out, what they talked about on the race broadcast, it's really cool to see that millions of people know more about their story and about their legacy. And what do you think? Ryan, it's always been that misconception, and we talked to him about it on our show when we interviewed Ryan earlier this year. He's not a dirt guy. Everyone thinks he's a dirt guy. But I think this asphalt, little asphalt championship is good for that whole family's legacy. What do you think?
Yeah, it might work out for him. I don't know. I don't know if his dad and his uncle look at him, quite the same though. They probably both, sooner or later, you're gonna have to do some dirt.
I'm okay with holding off on that for a little bit longer.
Yeah, we're okay.
We talked about our emotions in those closing laps of the race, and Ryan mentioned it a few times. He's not really an emotional guy. He says he's not an emotional guy, yet it's Coke 600, Talladega, even a little bit in that Martinsville win, especially in his interview here. He seems like he's becoming a little bit of an emotional guy. I think some of that's fighting this adversity and silencing the doubters and the Kyle Pettys of the world that were a little bit hard on him early in the season. So he talks about the emotions that were kind of going through in those closing laps, and I feel like we were all with him as that was happening.
I did tear up on the last lap a little bit in the helmet. Just thinking about a lot of stuff. I was a little sobbing baby on the radio after the race. I could barely speak. Just thinking about everything. Proud of everybody. It's been a long career in motorsports, and I don't know. Just kind of overcome with emotion. I mean, if you try to do something for a long time, you're overcome with it, and it's just kind of part of it. So,
now, do you want to hear what he's talking about when he's was being a sobbing baby as he crossed the line? Because I do have that audio pulled up. There's going to be a little bit of engine noise here, but I think you'll get the picture. And then my favorite part of this audio is when they have the series director coming on and telling Ryan that he is the Cup champion.
Oh, What an awesome year, man. Thank you so much. Can always celebrate with you guys. RP, congrats. Thanks for giving me a shot. Congrats, everybody. That's so cool, man.
Hell of a job, driver. Proud of you for sticking with it all year. Way to go, Team 12.
Congrats, Jonathan, everybody. Y'all deserve it, man. So cool.
Brian Blaney, you got a copy? Congratulations, buddy. Great job, you, Jonathan, the entire team. 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion. Come on out, celebrate, start finish line for us, buddy. Great job, team.
He burned it down again, second time this year. Wasn't sure if he was going to do it or not, but I think he knows the fans kind of want it. And I thought the burnout at Talladega was big. Man, you'd think that this guy had been practicing this a lot, but outside of maybe burnouts on the boulevard and that Talladega one, he hasn't really done it too much. But he did one heck of a burnout for those fans in Phoenix.
It was pretty cool. Jumped up on top of the car, did this thing like he was waving the smoke out of his way. And it was, it was really, really cool to see. You can't, I know he has a little tradition. He can go back to it during the regular season, but when it's the biggest race basically of your career at this point, I think you have to. I think you kind of have to. And it was a lot of emotions from us. He doesn't show a lot of it, but when he does, it kind of gets you emotional too, because you've been following it. We've been following it for all these years now. And, we really hoped this day would come,
So it was a huge day for us, a huge day for Ryan and this team. And he spoke really briefly on, the momentous occasion that this was and what it would mean in his career going forward.
Oh, by far. But this tops everything, right? This is what you dream of as a kid. This is what you strive for. This is what you run 35 races a year for, to get to this moment, to have a shot at the championship, and then you have to run a perfect race to get it. So, definitely huge moment, not only for me, everybody involved in it. It's way bigger than I am, and I can't thank those folks enough for doing what they do.
I know I've put through the paces of all these clips, but I feel like each one has been kind of important along the way and told a great story. And this last one from Roger Penske just might be my favorite.
I think his limits are the sky, to be honest with you. I think that, he gets in that class, with Mears. He's a soft-spoken guy, really. But when he gets behind the wheels, like Joey, when he puts his hat on, don't get in his way. And I think they showed that today. And he's only getting better and better. He's got the confidence. He's a leader. He's a winner, and he's a champion. And once you have that, it's so hard to get there. I don't think any of us realize him personally, just those last 20 or 30 laps when he had to pass a couple of those guys to get the championship. That shows his true mettle. But he's got a long way to go, a long way.
About the fourth time I've said you'd love to hear that from the captain. And I feel like he's always had Ryan's back. He's been somebody that he's enjoyed seeing grow from a young man to an adult, to a Cup Series champion. And you can just feel it. They have Ryan locked in on a multi-year agreement at Team Penske. And just from those words from Roger himself, it doesn't seem like they're going to let him go anytime soon. And they see that, the sky's the limit. There's a ton of upside when it comes to Ryan Blaney. And hopefully this is just the first of many championships to come.
Yeah. Roger, at one of his other press answers, talked about the continuity at Penske. And that's something that you can't buy. And there are people there who have been there through the 10 years that Ryan has been there and been with Ryan most of that time. And other guys have come along, but they've built a continuity within the organization. And, even when Fords don't look like that they're doing very well, the Fords have won back-to-back championships out of the same company. And that's a testament to Roger and what he's put together and how he's built something for these guys to win championships. So the sky's the limit, right?
Can't believe it, Steve. I said it at the top. Can't believe it, but I can believe it. And felt like maybe we have believed it all year long. And I just don't know. We chatted a little bit about this before the show, but I thought, being a fan of Ryan, being a little bit humble, I thought he's going to be a good driver. He's going to win, 10, 15, maybe 20 races. Hopefully he gets that championship. Now that he's hoisted the trophy, I'm like, yeah, man, if he does get 10, at least 10 more races, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, right? Can you imagine that? Ryan Blaney in the NASCAR Cup Series Hall of Fame. I think it's possible.
Hey, we've already predicted a couple things on this show in a short time we've been doing it, right? He got to that 10 win mark. Yeah, double that up, go get some more wins, and let's squeeze another championship or two out of this. That's the best part about the experience is he's already experienced it now. So now you know what it takes. Now you know what the effort takes. There's an old story about Wayne Gretzky when he was a young hockey player, and they played in the Stanley Cup Finals like one of the first times, and they lost. Okay, they lost, and they went to the winners' locker room and saw all the guys just kind of laid out. They were all like exhausted, and they're all tired and all dead, basically, from the match. And he realized from that point on, well, that's what it took. It took that kind of effort. It took that kind of passion. It took whatever it took to win. And Ryan has now seen that. We've had a whole season of it. We know what it looks like. We know what it takes to do it. And now, when, learning from that experience, duplicating it, is a definite possibility because now you know what it takes to do it.
So as we speak, Ryan was making his way out to New York City. Champion always goes on a bit of a media tour. He's probably going to do several morning shows. He'll probably be with people like Barstool Sports, doing lots of other social media engagement, and probably touring that trophy around the city and beyond. So that's going to be his next few days. So if you want to keep this thing rolling, follow along all of his social media channels. I'm sure NASCAR is going to be pumping out a lot of content when it comes to that. If you want to continue the celebration, the NASCAR awards ceremony is set for Thursday, November 30th at Music City Center in Nashville, Tennessee. That broadcast, I don't know the exact time yet, but it's usually in the evening, 6 or 7 p.m. Is going to be broadcast live on the radio only, MRN, Sirius XM NASCAR radio. They'll broadcast live during that event, so you can hear it that night, November 30th. That's a Thursday. The TV broadcast is going to be tape delayed until 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, December 3rd, and it's on everybody's favorite streaming channel, Peacock. So unfortunately, for those of you that want to tune into that, you're most likely going to have a Peacock subscription. But if you do also have access to MRN, I think they have their own streaming app. If you have access to Sirius XM NASCAR radio, you're going to be able to hear that whole event live on Thursday night. But if you want to watch a video version of that, it looks like you're going to have to wait until December 3rd at 7 p.m. and watch that on Peacock. And that will pretty much wrap up that Cup Series championship run for Ryan Blaney. Steve, one other really awesome thing when it comes to media that we should talk about briefly is the fact that Ryan Blaney's whole championship run here, this whole playoffs, has been documented by NASCAR Productions as they're working in turn with Netflix to do a documentary series similar to what they did last year on USA. This time will be on Netflix. I think it's going to have a little bit more of that Formula One Drive to Survive vibe than maybe last year's episodes had with that USA Network special. So how cool is it that Ryan wins his first Cup Series championship in pretty much forever? We're going to be able to go back and relive that race to race to race because they're doing this documentary series.
Yeah, it's that's going to be really, really cool. I had Netflix. I probably get it back just for that. But hey, the Netflix people should be calling us. I told you this the other day. I was like, we're the Bible on this whole thing. We're the definitive, week to week, we chronicled everything that just happened all the way through this season, with the highs, the lows, the different things, the little behind the scenes things that happen during a race. If you ever get bored this winter and you want to go back and listen to a bunch of episodes, or just pick out your favorites, pick out the wins. A lot of people like to listen to the wins, but truthfully, I'm just kidding around. I mean, Netflix is going to do a fabulous job with this, and I can't wait to see it and see what they because we've seen the cameraman following Ryan around at the tracks like crazy. So they knew who to follow, that's for sure, and can't wait to see what happens.
So to wrap this thing up, let's take a look at the top 10 in the NASCAR Cup Series standings after the race at Phoenix Raceway, the finale in the NASCAR Cup Series season. Ryan Blaney's your winner, first position, NASCAR Cup Series champion. Second, Kyle Larson. Third, William Byron. Fourth, Christopher Bell. Obviously, they just fall in line as they finish the race at Phoenix, with Bell finishing fourth after he had that brake rotor failure. In the fifth position, Denny Hamlin. Sixth, Tyler Reddick. Seventh, Chris Buescher. Eighth, Brad Keselowski. Ninth, the race winner from Sunday, Ross Chastain. And I think this is a big deal. 10th position, Bubba Wallace. Straight up in points. They're battling there those last couple races to get in that 10th position, and he actually bypasses Martin Truex Jr., who was the regular season champion, to get that 10th spot. So notable things there. The 45 and 23, both 2311 cars finish in the top 10 in the standings. The 17 and 6 finish 7th and 8th, both RFK cars finish in the top 10 in the standings. So talk about Ford having some struggles over the season. You still got 3 out of the 10 are Ford vehicles, Ford Mustangs. So congratulations to all those folks that finished in the top 10. But obviously, our big congratulations goes to Ryan Blaney, Jonathan Hassler, all of Team 12, all of Team Penske, all the men and women back at the shop, anybody involved with that team. Congratulations. I know they're going to have some pretty big celebrations this week and into the future. And at some point, though, Jonathan will tell you they have to focus on 2024. And who knows how long their celebrations will last. They might get off on a vacation a little bit, but they're really soon going to have to hit the ground running. And as far as I know, December, I don't know who's going to it, maybe not Blaney, but there's going to be a test back there at Phoenix Raceway with this next gen car and some other things they want to adjust with the short track package. So that's going to bring them back to reality really, really fast. And as far as I know from today, it's only like 104 or so days until the Daytona 500. That's not a long time, and it's going to be here before you know it. And they're also, remember, the Clash at the Coliseum is going to happen too, and that's going to happen a couple weeks before. So short off season, but hopefully it feels like a long time to soak in this championship win by Ryan Blaney. I told you I filled up my Fanatics cart last night and gave my credit card a pep talk, like Roger Penske gave a pep talk to Ryan to make sure it could handle what was coming its way. But as it's been with any time I've had a team or a sports team franchise, somebody that's found some success, won a championship, I have to have all the things and try and remember it. But like you said, thankfully, we have the memories of every single episode that we've done this year on the podcast and all the people that we've interviewed and chronicled it the whole way through, and we'll be able to keep this forever. We do have some housekeeping to do, and that involves the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. I think it's worth mentioning who our champion is, who our playoff champion is, and where we finished out the season. My lineup, which I forgot until about 5 minutes before the green flag to set my lineup. So I got it in right under the deadline there. My team started Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, had Joey Logano in the garage. I'm realizing that maybe that wasn't the best idea because I don't think they gave those guys, I thought they would give them the stage points just based on where they finished, but they didn't. So I really only was getting 30. I mean, Truex, who was out of it and did get stage points, got me the most. So it got me 41 points. Ryan got me 35, Larson 34, Byron 33, Hamlin 29, and again, Truex got me 41. I picked Ryan over Larson. That was right. In the featured matchups, I picked Byron over Bell. That was right. I picked Hamlin over Logano. That was right. And I picked Harvick over Reddick, and that was right. So I swept the featured matchups. But yeah, it wasn't a great strategy, I guess, to pick the championship for. So I ended up finishing 22nd with 162 points or 212 points earned, with just 10 stage points coming via Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. So what did your lineup look like? Did you do the same thing as me? Did you forget? How did that go?
Yeah, I had Truex, Logano, Harvick, Keselowski, and Elliott with the Gibbs in the garage. So
you were smarter than I.
I read the disclaimer that was at the top of the page that said that.
I didn't have time to read. I was frantically trying to make my picks because I was dumb and forgot.
I had Ryan over Larson. I had Byron over Bell, so I got those right. I had Logano, unfortunately, with Hamlin. And then I did have Harvick over Reddick. So, pretty good points day. Harvick was second most in points, and Truex was fourth most in points. I didn't really research much. I just tried to make sure I had some guys who could start and weren't in the final four because I wanted those stage points.
So let's take a look at the top 10 in points earned at Phoenix Raceway. And we have a 1, 2, 3, 4-way tie for 10th with my wife, Rogers T, with 223 points, Factory of Sadness 6, and Bulldog 0277 in the Prime Minister 3. Again, in the 10th position, all with 223 points earned. 9th is Pocono Lady of 225. 8th is Fike 21, 226. The defending champion, Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, in 7th in points earned at Phoenix, 230. 6th is Van 12 at 220 or 231. 5th is Joe Lopez 1, 233. 4th is Zero Schlitz Given, 242. 3rd, JD Racing, 243. 2nd, Dr. Race Chaser, shout out to him, 249. And winning the weekend at Phoenix, Whip Wilson in the number 1 position, 255 points earned. Now, the playoff standings that mean nothing, and I stress this every week that it means nothing, and I'll go through why that's important here. 10th position, the Nutty Gamer, 2,023 points. 9th, Moose Hunter 1960, 2,028. 8th, Blaney Bus, 2,031. 7th, congrats to me, Team Blaney host Adam, 2,036. 6th, the defending champ again, Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, 2,039. 5th, Blaring Idiots, 2048. 4th, Zero Schlitz Given, 2056. 3rd, JD Racing, 2,069. 2nd, Fike 21, 2,090. And my wife, Rogers T, wins the playoff standings. First position, 2,108 points earned. She wins it by 18 points over Fike 21 in second. I finished 7th. And you fell down the leaderboard a bit. You were in the top 10 for a little bit while in the playoffs, but now you ended up finishing 45th. Mez 12, 1,828 points. But here is where it all matters and where I didn't have a chance. 30th position, Team Blaney host Adam, 6,645. Not shocked, Steve. I'm not shocked that I did not contend. 3rd year in a row here. Was not in contention. Fell a little bit. I was a little bit cocky last week. I think I was up into the 20s, but knocked me back down a peg here. 30th. Where did you finish? Oh, so close. 27th position, Mez 12, 6,679 points. Oh, I closed the gap. But I didn't get you. Congratulations to you. You win in the room. You win in the chat room here, but that's about it. You win nothing else. Defending champion from the last 2 years has been defeated. Breaking news. Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, 10th position, 6,902 points. And I must say, he rallied to get back to that 10th position. Fell off the face of the earth during the summer months and picked things back up again. 9th, Eric D15, 6,949. 8th is JD Racing, 6,970. 7th is Alyssa Seath, 6,982. 6th is Fike 21, 7,021. 7th is Blaring Idiots, 7028. 4th is Go Larson, 7035. 3rd, Penske Fan 24, 7046. 2nd, Factory of Sadness 6, 7,092. First position, congratulations, goes out to Blaney's Daisy, who I believe has been playing the fantasy game with us for at least a couple of years. Blaney's Daisy, 7,127 points, is the overall champion in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Cue the lights, cue the confetti. You win. You will win something. You just have to contact us. Reach out to Team Blaney on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. Send us a DM. Let us know that it's you. Show us a little bit of proof with a screenshot or something too, that shows that it is indeed you, Blaney's Daisy. And we want to send you some swag, a little swag for winning the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. And thank you, everybody. Very active league this year, all the way through. Sometimes you get some points when people kind of fall off, but based on the points that I have seen scored here, out of the 100 people that are eligible, about 70 folks were actively setting their lineups every single week. Halfway through the season, we still had people asking to get in. So thank you, everybody, for playing along with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed our kind of brief and not always expert level take on fantasy racing and who you should pick, especially considering two fellows here finished 27th and 30th in the overall standings, maybe you shouldn't listen to us. But like Tony Stewart, I heat up in the playoffs, heat up in the summer, and I did that, and I finished in the top 10 in the playoffs. So pay attention to me when we get to the round of 16 and beyond. You don't want to pay attention to me in the first half of the season. So again, congratulations to Blaney's Daisy. Congratulations to my wife, Rogers T, for winning the playoff championship. And let's say we do this again next year, and maybe one of us will contend for this championship at some point. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to pay better attention to my lineup from now on. I messed up a couple different things this year for sure.
Well, Steve, I think that pretty much wraps up this championship edition of the Team Blaney podcast. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff for hours. Yeah. We did. I know this is a pretty long episode, so if you're still listening at this point, thanks for hanging in with us. But we really wanted to cover all the bases. I wanted to get you all of those audio clips from the post-race press conferences, just in case you didn't hear them, and give you some insight on what was going on with that 12 team all throughout the weekend. And what Roger and everybody at Team Penske thinks is what they're capable of going forward.
Yeah. Keep an eye out on the feed. This will come out Tuesday morning or whatever, but keep an eye out in the future. We will try to work on having a couple guests from the championship winning team or crew. If we can, we're going to, we got to let them do their schedule. But at some point, somewhere along the line, I'll try to have, somebody come along and hopefully be able to do a couple interviews, and we can throw them up there for you too.
Yeah, and if you get bored over the off season and we get through some of those newer episodes that we have, go back and listen from the very beginning of the year, where we have Dave Nichols, we have Jonathan Hassler, we have Ryan Blaney, we have Tony Palmer, we have Chris Conklin, probably leaving out more people. We had Raymond the year before. Several members of this championship winning 12 crew have already been on with us. Ryan Blaney himself gave us a really great and long interview about halfway through the season. That is definitely a must listen for anybody that's a fan of Ryan Blaney. So thank you, everyone, once again for tuning into this episode and all 41 other episodes of the Team Blaney podcast this year. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, just listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.Blaney. And finally, we'd like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Established in 2018, this organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch Fan Club. Shout out to Patty and Lee and everybody there. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So, for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.